If you could describe radical acceptance and self-care in one word, phrase, or mantra, what would it be?
I want to say do no harm, but take no shit. Whatever it is that you want for yourself and in your life, I keep coming back to desire as far as accepting yourself, like what it is that you want and how that shows up in who you are. So if you're not harming anyone, but also like don't take no shit in the pursuit of it.
Welcome, queer kittens and new earballs. I'm V, a two-spirit human, joy influencer, energy worker, and a dad joke connoisseur. All pronouns accepted. We are a podcast where we help queer folks find radical acceptance and love for themselves and for others. And wherever you are in your wellness journey, just know you're not alone. We hope this podcast brings you joy, where you'll learn, laugh, heal, and grow. Here at Quest, we celebrate Black liberation, not only during Black History Month, but all the time. So today, we have a special guest, Halo the Gxdbody, and they go by they, them pronouns. And Halo does the work to remove the shame and give power back to POC bodies. Halo the Gxdbody is the divine embodiment of Black love, liberation, joy, and pain as pleasure. A queer, non-binary, magical Black radical, anti-capitalist, alchemist, lover, dream chaser, shapeshifter, writer, and we're just so excited to have them here today. And we're going to talk about how sexual wellness is an emerging topic in the wellness space. Through colonization, many communities have been disempowered, and in this episode, we're going to be exploring and reclaiming sexual liberation through a POC perspective. We're going to talk a little bit about Halo's article, which is incredible. Y'all should go read the whole thing. It's called Black Sex, Magick, and How Activating Pleasure Can Change the World. And we will have that article linked in the show notes. And as they said in this article, put simply, magic is the intention manipulation of energy to achieve a desired goal. Sex magic involves harnessing the creative energy inherent in pleasure and orgasm to manifest desires. I got to witness Halo live in action, performing what they would call carnal alchemy, which carnal alchemy is the act of combining BDSM sexual practices with ritualistic magic to create transformational energy. So I got to watch how they empowered an entire room of folks chanting the mantra that actually we learned in episode 19 with Aima the Dreamer. All walls gon' fall, free 'em all, free 'em all. All walls gon' fall, free 'em all, free 'em all. So without further ado, here's Halo.
Peace, y'all. What's good? I'm Halo the Gxdbody. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm coming to you directly from the stars. I like to say I was born in the stars, like we all are, and landed on the planet in the Philippines in the 80s. Came down to see through my purpose of Black liberation through cooperation and sexual energy exploration. We'll call that carnal alchemy, but I'm excited to talk to y'all more about that and the different ways that our creativity is so powerful and possible. Yeah, I guess I want to say that like my embodiment of Halo, I said like my highest self, but like really being in tune, right, with that creativity, and that for me is what like the divinity comes back to, is our ability to create and all the different ways that looks. So it will come through. That's another Gemini thing for me. I will give the bars. Okay, I do love to freestyle, so
yeah,
see what that looks like.
yeah, live poetry.
All day. Yes. It feels like akin to, I don't know, like an artist expression, an artistic expression of the sacral magic, baby.
That sacral magic. And in case any of you are like, what in the world is sacral magic? It starts with the chakras. And those are 7 energy points that are centered down the body, which many Asian countries have a lot of information on, some indigenous countries here in the US, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So instead, I'm going to tell you sacral magic starts in the sacral chakra, which is also known as the navel chakra or the womb chakra. And this chakra plays an important role in our happiness, sensuality, creativity, emotions, sexuality, compassion, and even receptiveness. Actually, read your article on that, and you talked about like sacral healing and how you learned from a Mexican witch. And I was like,
Sure did.
Mexican.
Scorpio. They got me, Lee.
Oh.
I did learn a lot from this person, my ex, who I would love to speak about, and I wonder how much they would love for me to speak about them. I don't think a lot. I don't think they like that a lot, but I do think that it has to be acknowledged the different ways. Like, I feel like my path has been laid out, and like the things that I learn and experience along the way that don't feel accidental in terms of especially how like big they end up being in my life. So very important figure in my journey and what I got to learn and how I got to learn around medicine in so many different ways. But sex magic being one of those, for sure.
Yeah. Let's rewind a little bit. I like to ask everyone that comes on the show, when did your wellness like begin? When were you like, damn, I need to take better care of myself?
I feel like there are stages, but what feels like the most recent, or like, let's say the most recent expression or iteration of that was when I was living in LA and coming out of relationships. I want to say like 2016, 2017. There was a period of time I was just like bouncing through in between situationships and loved ones. And I was definitely feeling and recognizing the need to re-ground in myself and like all the love that I was seeking from other people, right? And like what ways that could be provided by me for me in terms of like showing up and offering care and like prioritizing myself and caring for myself. So I really got into journaling and having a daily practice, started going to group meditations and taking more yoga classes, or just like really committing to a yoga practice of my own and trying to, what I feel now at like this stage in my healing journey and my wellness journey, always exploring what my therapist calls my mother wounds, right? Like where that shows up in terms of my experience in relationship, trying to build community and seek those things that get rooted in your mother core wounds, which is interesting to bring into this space. But I am adopted. That's definitely a big part of like my story. And I think where even my wellness begins is like always having that information and that knowledge. But yeah, I would say like late 2010s, like really devoting to and exploring through like how I'm loving and taking care of myself and like redefining what love and relationship looks like. So
yeah, that reminds me of a line you said in your article. Everything we create is shaped by and reflects our internal condition. So this makes me think you had that awareness of your internal condition, and then you're like, yo, like I need to do something about it. And here you are now doing this, you call it like a 2-heart healing. the traditional heart chakra and the sacral chakra. And witnessing you do that live at an event that we were both in attendance to, it was spiritual. A lot of people are afraid of what BDSM or kink or play or what all of that can bring to someone. And I think this was the first time for me that it was also very spiritual. And it was beautiful to witness. And I just thought that maybe you could share a little bit more of that power that you hold when you're healing those sacral chakras. Not only, I feel like it's a mutual healing when it's happening.
Thank you for naming that and bringing that into this space, because what a powerful experience that we got to have together. And I just feel very grateful for the invitation and for the trust and also for being seen. Like, I jokingly say this, but I mean it, that my ambition is, and I see myself as like a sex priest, right? Like bringing us back to the divinity of our sexuality, which has been obscured purposely in many different ways. I think we've been distracted from, especially in the demonization, especially for the way that like Black and brown bodies have been separated from their sexuality and their freedom to feel and experience pleasure. And even being able to choose when to do that, right? Like coming out of legacies of slavery and forced labor. Yeah, how we know that like sex was violent often during those times. Because I think of the depths of the wound, right? So much potential in the healing and the liberation and like that power that comes through in the creativity, creative energy. Creative energy literally is like the most powerful thing, right? Thinking about and like pointing to the connection with your womb and sacral chakra, with your sex organs and sacral chakra. We have examples, like tangible examples of the creativity that comes through sex, just hetero, cis-normative sex. But because we know that our chakras are connected to our physical bodies, and what they're connected to energetically is manifested through how we engage in our bodies, right? Like, how do we move through the world? So being able to recognize another heart in your sacral chakra through that creativity, through that pleasure, and like bringing that awareness, like you said, your internal condition. Like if you are in turmoil, if you are still like maybe healing through lots of different things that need to be healed to, they will show up in like what you attract, right? And what you manifest, how things transform in your life. And I'm kind of tying a lot of things in here, but as far as the internal condition, I don't know, I think some of our language refers to shadow work, right? In terms of like being able to see the elements of yourself that do require that light, right? Like that attention, like how do you transform those things until you become aware of them, until you bring them from the shadows, but maybe they don't necessarily leave the shadow, but we do have to acknowledge that they exist and that we can address them. Name and address the demons is like what I like to say about that. But I think there, again, is so much potential in people remembering, and because, yeah, I think we all know this. We all know this. It's like us remembering how much power that we literally are just like holding in these energy bodies, these shells. And so many of our like wellness and spiritual practice really lend to that in terms of even like breath work. So Kink, I think, is somatics, honestly, like the different ways that our senses are activated and can help regulate us. I'm even thinking about like impact or rope play, right? Like we know they're like tight hugs and compression are like really soothing, right? Self-regulating. And we know how much pain and trauma can be held in our hips. So all the different ways that we can be reminded to come back to our bodies, for one, to heal, and then for two, to empower ourselves to recognize that through our pleasure and all the energies, we have a lot of possibility.
Yeah, it's crazy that you mentioned that about kink and being like a somatic experience, not only with the senses, but also like with learning boundaries, with learning how to listen to your body and what it wants, what it doesn't want, and how to express that to someone else, as well as learning how to respect boundaries as well, because there's so much trust, consent, communication, like so much that goes through it. I feel like so many people are afraid of kink because they're like, oh, I don't want to get beat, and it's just like, no, it's beyond that. Like,
Yeah.
it is such a beautiful relationship and partnership and co-creation through it. It had taught me to learn my own boundaries, to continue learning the boundaries, because they call it play for a reason, and sometimes it's not just sexual, sometimes it's just fun.
Right. No, for sure. It's exploration, like co-creation, like you said. And I just like have to let it sit in my body for how much I feel like kink and BDSM offer for people to heal, for Black people especially to heal, for marginalized people. Consent is such a huge part, and I'm resonating so much with the boundaries. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm in my head, right, about like how I have had my own experiences with being able to feel like kink, because I have the practice of boundaries in this space, that I can bring that back into like my non-kink life, right? And like how much I feel like so many people would benefit from that. Just like the communication, the negotiation, everybody's got to agree or not, right? Like and find ways to agree, at least in this settings that we create for ourselves, right? But like there's so much intention there that, again, I feel like would benefit our like relationships interpersonally, maybe even professionally. Like really, for me, looking at how many different levels of like healing and transformation are possible through exploring BDSM. And honestly, I've made a connection between BDSM and what I understand and refer to as carnal alchemy or sex magic, but there's so many connections between like power dynamics and the way that you engage the body in carnal alchemy ritual, in a BDSM ritual or session or play session. But I think the bond and the trust that you build through these experiences of co-creating and negotiating is also really healing, right? Because we a lot of times don't have that experience in our close relationships, in our work relationships, in just our relationship to the state even, right? Like that feels so huge to me when I think about like incarceration and Black folks and brown folks experience with that, like how much the state does and wants to control our bodies and what and how we can move and where we can and can't be. Like to be able to be in a space, so specifically thinking about kink and BDSM, right? Like to be in a space where you literally get to have autonomy and agency over what's going to happen to your body is so special and so rare. And like in that rarity, I feel also there's a lot of healing available. And again, like the healing plays into the energy that's available in the transformation and the manifestation. So
definitely, if you're open to it.
Yeah, definitely got to be open for sure.
That brings me to a question that came up while reading the article and discussing with the team about, how we broke down your article. And we were talking about maybe wanting to ask you, like, do you consider sex and pleasure different things?
Yeah, I feel like sex is one way that we can experience pleasure, for sure. And I think that in the realm of pleasure activism, What are the different ways that we can experience pleasure and center pleasure and not think of pleasure as an afterthought? Maybe make it a ritual. Sex can be an accessible way to do that, depending on what your relationship is to it, what relationships you have. There's also different ways that we can define pleasure for ourselves. Like, I get a lot of pleasure out of being in nature and going for walks, right? And I get a lot of pleasure out of dancing and moving my body. I get a lot of pleasure out of playing games. I love Scrabble, and I will play that as often as I can, right? Being around and with people who I'm really connected to, and, you know, my tribe and my community, like, that brings me pleasure. So I think there's an invitation. Yeah, consider sex amongst, I don't want to say an arsenal, maybe that's a way we can think about it. Part of our tools, our tool set of activating and bringing pleasure back to the center and a regular part of our existence.
Oh, 100%.
How we think about wellness holistically, right?
Yeah, definitely. Pleasure and sex being another branch of wellness and not just like the birds and the bees.
Literally, there's so many chemicals and endorphins that are released and activated during sex on that, like, physical level. Also, it's an energy exchange. It's a way to feel intimacy and connection, which we all want, which I think is a basic human need. And again, depending on like the container, but these are ideals. And I feel like we have to continue to remind ourselves of that, because we have this puritanical society that will tell you when and why you should and shouldn't be engaging in sex, you know? And I think there is responsibility to it in terms of, I don't know, kids out here and reproducing and STIs and things like that.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, like, as primal beings, like, sexual energy is part of our nature and part of our wellness. So
that brings me thinking about like the whole sex magic and all of it, and how I think about sex as women were just taught, marry a man, have kids, blah, blah, blah. Like, that our womb is just to create kids. That we never think of the power that's behind the womb, the creation that lies in the womb. And because all around us, like, sex sells. So that's all we're thinking of. And I love how you use the sex magic as a divining tool. And it makes me think of, like, in that group, the experience we had, and how the whole group said the quote that actually we learned from Aima, that y'all do with your sex magic. It's all walls gonna fall, free 'em all, free 'em all. And I literally got the chills when all of us were saying that. And I just really wanted to, like, dive in a little bit more into how can people, like, bring that into their own bedrooms or wherever they're having magical times.
Magically delicious. Yes, thank you for lifting that up. And I just, like, want to say this now, that one of the things that I do after anything I'm involved with is, like, what didn't I do? What did I even do? What could have I done better? And I was immediately in my head, like, I cannot believe I did not shout out my baby for this Freedom All chant, which is a really special evolution of how we have been exploring ritual and energy exchange. So to answer the question that you asked, how can we bring this into our bedroom? A thing that we like to do, and that I really want to and love inviting folks to do, is use this mantra specifically. But, like, again, when we're thinking about sex magic, a lot of times people are arriving at that for, like, a personal manifestation desire, right? Like, what do I want for myself? I think we're at a time now where people for themselves also want collective in freeing Palestine, right? Mm-hmm. But also, like, we're in this moment where Palestine is like a portal that's opening our awareness to the global atrocities, right? So we're also calling in and recognizing Sudan and Congo and Haiti, right? And everywhere where folks are oppressed around the world, where all of us need to be and break free. Because of how I understand sex magic, the pinnacle point for this creative energy that we can give our intention to is during your orgasm, right? And during your climax. Folks who might do different forms of divination and manifestation understand the idea of a petition, or, right, like what it is that we're asking for. And also, we can use phrases or mantras to represent that thing that we're asking for. So what's really powerful is to say or think of that mantra as you are climaxing. And you can also do different things that can bring that into your space, even symbolically. So another thing that we've done is create a sigil, which is basically a symbol that represents your petition. And we have put that on candles and burned candles with that same petition, and burned candles while we're, in the act. And repeating the mantra, free 'em all, free 'em all, free 'em all, free 'em all, through our climax, through our orgasm, doing that together, and really thinking while we're doing it of directing our energy through our crowns. So often, most times, maybe very naturally or reflexively, our orgasmic energy will be concentrated in our womb, in our sacral, and that makes sense. And with some intention and attention to it, some practice, we can learn to direct that orgasmic energy through our crown chakra while we're repeating this mantra, which sounds like a lot, but that's kind of like the most powerful way to bring in all the different ways that we can engage that. But yes, free 'em all walls gonna fall. Free 'em all.
Free 'em all. Free 'em all. All walls gonna fall. All walls gonna fall. Oh, free 'em all. Man, I'm still like buzzing from that, and having like a group of people really sitting in that and saying that together. Just the height of orgasm and saying that sounds like pure magic.
All day.
I could. I was gonna say something silly, but
I think you should say it.
I was gonna tell my partner who's on the couch, just be like, "Let's try it later."
Yeah, exactly. Put it to the test.
And since we're talking about sex magic, I wanted to talk to you about how you used a sex magic ritual towards Black liberation and returning land to Indigenous people through CrashPad. And for those of y'all who don't know what CrashPad is, it's a safe space where LGBTQ plus adult film performers can share their sexuality in an environment that is inclusive, professional, and fun. So, I'm ready to hear a little bit more about this CrashPad ritual.
So, we talked earlier about my Mexican sex witch, Twin Flame, by the way. So, I don't know. All this feels, again, very divine, meant to be, cosmic, in the stars, whatever. They had been practicing sex witch for some time before the two of us met and had a few of their own episodes on CrashPad. So we were having our own exploration around, sex magic and manifestation. So this person also, Mexican and Indigenous. And we felt a lot of power and purpose in the two of us finding each other in this lifetime and having the opportunity to activate different levels of magic and intention and ritual through the CrashPad episode. I don't know if you know how a crash pad works, but they like give you a room, they give you a crew, and they're like, go ahead and do whatever you want, which is really beautiful. So we really got to design this ritual. And I'm laughing because I'd never done anything like this. And it was in my relationship with this person where I discovered like the likelihood of my ancestry in the Philippines being sex workers, because I was born in Angeles, which is on the main island and not far from an Air Force base. And for a long time, sex work, I don't know if it was legal ever, but was always really active and practiced there. So strong chances that my mother is a sex worker. And I went as like my human self, went to college, right? Got a degree, like did all the sort of run-of-the-mill things you're supposed to do. I was never interested in making porn. I always would try to get my lovers to record with me, but I was not like trying to formally be a porn star. So I was like, you know what? We're really gonna have to make this matter. I had a pet care business at the time while I was living in LA, also in my third dimension self. And that felt like a really big risk for me, that like I would have clients see me or recognize me. And so I was very much like, this has to be meaningful and we got to be safe about it. Who's going to see this? Who's going to see this? And so we landed on creating a ritual, which included us really writing out like the steps and what we were calling in, what we were saying, our incantation, like the order of operations, if you will, like really thought out, like how are we opening the ceremony? What are we bringing for the altar? So there's an altar in the scene that we created for that. And we had a different dynamic in our relationship than we played with and explored in the scene, which I actually wasn't ready for. So like some BTS stuff, right? Like this being my first porn shoot or any shoot. I never even had like a photo shoot before this. So I was like, okay, this would be my first photo shoot. Just get naked. But there also being like some healing, I think, in my lineage around the relationship that we have to sex work, getting to choose to do sex work. And it's not something that's imposed on me or that's one of my only choices. Feels like some generational healing there. Being with this person and being able to intentionally spell out what our ritual was going to include, what were the phrases, and like co-creating that, right? Like what are we going to say in our incantation, and also who's going to hold what position, if you will, in our exchange, right? So we decided last minute, in my opinion, I think it was last minute, that I would play top in this scene, which is not what we did at the time, right? And I was like, I'm not ready for this. What am I supposed to do? I had never used a flogger. I was just like,
oh
okay.
My goodness.
I'm ready. We got it. It's all good. But it was a really powerful experience. In another way that I overcompensated for not having this experience before is I wrote a really long script, like word for word, all the things that we were going to say and our like initiation of the ceremony, where there's like a lot of talking before anybody does anything. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty silly, but we were really, I want to say, almost clever in a way, but intentional about wanting to integrate learnings that I had gotten from different writers. One of them specifically who wrote a Carnal Alchemy book. And I won't say his name because all these folks are white and it's fine. Like we gotta know who our teachers are and like give credit where they're due. But there's also lots of credit that was not included there. But, one of the things wanting to integrate from Carnal Alchemy is the idea of the top being this power exchange dynamic and that being agreed to, but also both parties like really recognizing again their divinity and almost in a BDSM context, like thinking of it as role play. So both of us like having this divinity element, this divinity personality, I won't name names, but that was also their embodiment in sex work, is the diosa. I feel, were able to channel both of our ancestry in what we were calling in, right, Black liberation and returning the land to indigenous folks. And so what we saw, so this happened in 2020, November 2020, here in the Bay. And about a year later, we saw reparations start to get some traction. So I think it was HR 40 had been, I'm going to say on the docket, I don't really think that's the language, right? But continually reintroduced for decades. And the following year after us doing this ritual, it had passed for the first time. And then the first municipal reparations package in Evanston, Illinois also passed really soon after that, which I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Maybe it's a coincidence. It's probably not, though, because another thing I point to is Deborah Holland being appointed to the Department of the Interior as the first Indigenous person to hold that position, which does work directly with with land, and especially with Native land. I'd also love to point to how there are now since then, some more examples of municipalities giving land back to Indigenous communities, including here in Oakland in the last few years. Sogorea got, I want to say 40 acres back. That might not be right, but there's several acres that Sogorea recently got back from the city of Oakland. And also, I think with Movement Generation, they got 40 acres back from another entity. So there's been a lot of developments that seem like they could be connected. They could be, let's just say that.
Yeah. I mean, and even when you mention, the magic that was used for the Haitian Revolution, you can't make that up. That voodoo magic that happened during that, and it being the only successful slave revolution ever, that at that size,
yeah, and to that degree, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is interesting too, because I've been seeing that on social media now, where people are talking about that ceremony, the boy Cayman, probably can't pronounce it, but
same.
Yeah, which I think is not an accident, and I want to share that even tonight. Are you familiar with the book Jambalaya by Louisa Teach, who's a practitioner?
My partner is. She's over there raising her hand.
Yes. So, she's still practicing. She's based in Oakland, and I follow her on Instagram, and she is doing a ritual on Sunday to end the war, which, I feel like we should all see if we're available for it.
I got Sunday
Join
off.
if we can. Okay, it's at 1:00. So I'll send it to you on Instagram. But it's really that, again, the collective energy and the intention and the interaction with the different elements in our environment and in ourselves that have the energy, right, of what we're trying to call in. I'm excited to see how that goes, and I'm excited to feel affirmed that this idea of collective energy and ritual and liberation, or ritual for the ends of liberation, is having a mainstream moment. That's a dream of mine, right? I have been wanting to, and I'm kind of maybe just talk here about the experience I got with Navel LA, where I've been interested in the different ways that we can intentionally do ritual together for collective and social petitions or ends, right? So going back to how we're maybe really used to magic being for things that we want for ourselves. So in 2020, I did a Navel LA Assemblies cohort. And Assemblies was arts, educational, skill share, learning experience. So there were different installations. Mine was called #FuckTheSystem, where I was interested in helping or supporting or empowering Black queer folks specifically, and especially those interested in or sex work, to learn about sex magic and be able to empower themselves for themselves through that, but also be in this experience where we're exploring how to put our energy collectively into a larger petition. So our petition for Fuck the System was protect Black women. we did some education exploration around like how sex magic works and the mechanics of that and some readings. And then I put a song together as this like arts aspect of this cohort with that petition, which I re-recorded recently, and maybe I should send to y'all because I'm realizing I didn't do that. That turned into a really healing experience. And one of the things that I want to explore is having more ritual like that. I left out that I did a ritual with myself and then recorded that ritual and took the audio of my orgasm and had it embedded in the song so that it was sharing the magic in that way, right? So like I like exploring tech magic, right? Like even the ritual that I did with Crash Pad is like tech magic, like using media to get messages and intention across and like blessed content, if you will. Seeing our Crash Pad episode as a blessed piece of media with our ritual and all of the symbology and the intention, incantations and things we included in that. So in the song, there is a recording of my orgasm, and I want to do more of that. And I want to do that in spaces like we shared on Friday, but where people know that's what we came to do. Yeah. have that ability to like come into the space on the same frequency. It's exciting to see different ways ritual and like collective liberation are in the conversation right now, because I want to do that. So
you're gonna do it.
It's happening.
It's already on the way. You're already doing the work and meeting the right people and in the right energy. I'm already seeing it. I'm attending it.
Let's go.
We do have one last question that we ask every guest at the end. And that would be, if you could describe radical acceptance and self-care in one word, phrase, or mantra, what would it be?
I want to say do no harm, but take no shit. So whatever it is that you want for yourself and in your life, or even in how you, I think desire, I keep coming back to desire as far as accepting yourself, like what it is that you want and how that shows up in who you are. So if you're not harming anyone, but also like, don't take no shit in the pursuit of it. That was a lot more than one word or phrase, but
that's okay. Most people do the same. They'll say one word or phrase and then go deeper into it. So you're on the right formula.
There it is. All right. Good things.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. But before we say our thank yous and blesseds, I wanted to ask you, how can people follow you if you would like to be followed?
Thanks for asking. Well, if you are a cishet man, there is an entrance fee. You can give a proper offering. Otherwise, no free shows. But you can find me on Instagram at behold_halo. It's BEEHOLD_halo. And that's pretty much where I'll be at. And I'll be on there a lot. But
and any shout outs? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks. I'm gonna shout out my baby again. Thank you for this connection. Thank you for the co-creation and all the exploration that we have been able to do together. And yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. We've been having some conversations about spaces we might explore, holding container for community around intimacy and connection and learning about sex magic. So stay tuned for that.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And shout outs to y'all for having me on. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Wow. Y'all doing beautiful work. And I just feel really honored and grateful to know you. I keep going back to the paths. Like, it's because of Aima that I was even at Some of Us, right? And like meeting y'all there and knowing all the things that brewed from that space. So yeah. Shout outs to us. Shout outs to our ancestors, by the way, while we're talking about paths. Who is laying the bricks? Who is doing the work, clearing the way? on the other side. Shout outs to the deities doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
Is that even appropriate? I'm like, shout out to Legua.
Oh,
shout
yeah,
out to Moya.
definitely.
Shout outs Ogun. War is a big thing now, but it's transformation, hopefully, through destruction. I don't see any possibility for like a world after this Gaza, Palestine genocide that folks forget what we're seeing and just like don't do anything, you know? So shout outs to all the forces and energies, the planets that are bringing around revolution and social change. I'm like, shout outs Pluto. Shout outs Aquarius. Them Aquarian vibes, boy. It's major.
Oh, yeah. But thank you for being here. Like, it was really a blessing to have met you and then saw your work live, and now to hear your story and get a little deeper. Like, you are a magical human, and I look forward to future connections, collaborations, and all of the above, and divinations, manifestations, all of it.
Let's do this. I'm so happy to be here. I know our folks had everything to do with it.
For sure.
Good
100%. We have so much more to explore and share with you on the pod. Tap that follow or subscribe button to get every episode as soon as it's released. And give us a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And join our wellness community on Instagram at Quest Wellness Pod. This podcast was produced in collaboration by Kinoko Chocolates and Puka Puka Creative. Executive producer, Stevie Kwa. Producer, editor, and sound designer, Leah Jackson. Associate producer, Rafaela Landestoy. Original music produced by Basque. His music is amazing. And we can't forget the emotional support by our fur babies, Frankie, Nugget, and Pukalani. Hey there, cool corn tortilla in my mouth.